My name is Joseph Triepke, and my company is the Oilfield Water Connection.
Outstanding. Thank you for joining the program here today. Upcoming conference, June 21st. Talk to me about that and give me the name of that one more time.
Yeah, the conference is the Oilfield Water Identifying and Financing the Right Solution Conference. As you mentioned, coming up June 21 in downtown Houston at the Petroleum Club. And it's a one-day event that kind of really focuses on the business, market, and finance issues going on in the oilfield water management industry today.
Talk to me a little bit about the water industry, how that's changed over the last, I don't know, as far back as you want to go. I mean, even over the last 5 years, it seems the water industry has changed pretty significantly due to a lot of the shale plays.
I think that's exactly right. I think it's always been a part of this industry. I mean, you've got some really great technical resources that date back decades in terms of information sources and conferences. You know, even in conventional assets before the shale industry, water was always an issue. From everything to drilling to the production side. But I think that the rush that we've seen, particularly in the Permian and the Mid-Con, with the stack and scoop over the last couple of years, call it 5 to 10 years, there has been an increasing focus on the water side, and again, not only on the freshwater side, but also on the water that we're producing and what to do with it all. So, as we look at the space today, we think the problem set has evolved from a technical, sort of issue to one that is probably going to be solved by business model evolution, corporate strategy, and financing new solutions at this point. So that's kind of where our focus is.
Talk to me a little bit about the conference here, some of the things it's gonna touch on, a little bit more specific, if you will. I know that the conference name kind of gives an overview of what it entails, but few things I'm thinking off the top of my head. Farmers are selling water to oil companies now, taking their water rights and selling them. I know in the Bakken and the Permian, the amount of water needed was underestimated and kind of recalculated over the past several years, that sort of thing. Just there's a couple examples. Just I kind of fired at you a little bit. I have no idea if these are going to be talked about at your conference or what. But talk to me a little bit about the speakers, some of the things that they're going to talk about, a little more of the specifics involved, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. It's a very good question. I think you're right. The volumes have increased. There's a lot of different facets and angles to this problem. This is not like a drilling rig where it's fairly cut and dry and there's only so many different offshoots that you could go. I think the landowner issue that you mentioned there is a really interesting one, and in the Permian in particular, lately we've seen a lot of ranch transactions. I think we'll see a lot more at really high valuations that have to do with water, surface rights right away, freshwater supply, as well as the disposal assets. So that will certainly factor into our discussion at this event, where we're talking about kind of optimizing and putting together the right package of water, midstream, service, and disposal infrastructure. And that certainly brings into play how do we build and solidify relationships within the community with ranchers, with water rights owners, right? So I think that topic will factor into the whole day, pretty much every panel that we have set up. But, a couple of the discussions that I'm particularly excited about are our keynote speakers is Peter Bowden. He is the lead energy investment banker at Jefferies. He's done over $200 billion worth of transactions that he's advised on. And everyone I've talked to about Peter has a great story to tell. I mean, this is one of the most respected investment bankers I've ever encountered, and I think his views are going to set the tone for the day in terms of laying out the landscape for the M&A the activity that we're seeing. I mean, I'm sure you and your listeners have seen, the WaterBridge deal last week. We had an IPO this morning that has a heavy water component. So investment banks have been very busy working on this water opportunity, and I think Peter's going to catch everyone up to speed on what's going on with that. Then, of course, we'll dive into what the model of the future looks like. We've got several panels discussing the evolution of the water midstream model and how E&P operators are increasingly relying on third-party companies to handle their water. That's a big change in mindset, and not everyone's on board with it yet. So how do we get there? How do we professionalize the sector and turn it into a profit center will be a theme throughout the day.
Taking a look at some of the other topics that are on here, how about when it comes to the recycling and the reusing world, that sort of thing? The whole idea, obviously, behind maximizing and becoming efficient with that side of the water business has always been a dream, and sometimes it's just pie in the sky. So is that going to be talked about at all in this conference, that reuse, that recycling the water?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got an expert that will be talking about the technology side and the economics of that on our 2 p.m. Panel, which is titled "What to Do with the Water." And so that's kind of really focused on how do we maximize reuse and what are the economics behind it. A couple of themes that I mentioned there to you too, Jason, is that from our own research. Clearly, there is a trend now towards more and more recycling, and I think what's really changed on that, you mentioned it's been pie in the sky in the past, and I agree with that characterization. I think what's changed is that the quality thresholds have come down for E&P operators. We're increasingly seeing operators being willing to take, water with less robust treatment. In some cases, as simple as just running it through a 25 micron screen, throwing some bactericide in it, and then piping it over to the next well, in the most extreme cases. And so I think in the past it's been, well, we've got to get this water extremely clean, and that's really cost prohibitive. And I think as that threshold's come down, it's enabled more operators to increase the percentage of recycled water in their fracs, which now, if you listen to some of the leading Permian E&Ps, that's as high as 25 to 30% of their water sourcing. So it's a key trend. I think it'll be addressed throughout the day, but we do have one panel that's specifically devoted to that topic.
Well, we had a guest on, Kimberly Wirtz, with she's an attorney. She spoke on water issues at the IOGCC, the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission. And she said water's the new frac sand this year. It's the new moneymaker. You know what I mean? Because that was the idea, right? Frac sand was the big moneymaker last year or 2 years ago. That was kind of the hot topic because that was, hey, the more spherical your sand was, the more you're needed down at the shale plays, that sort of thing. And it seems to me like water's really become that too. I agreed with her that water, figuring out water, how to recycle it, how to reuse it, how to work with these surface owners and the new land. Like you say, there's a lot of angles to water right now. And with every angle, there has to be a way to maximize the efficiency and the profitability with this, because let's be honest, they don't get the subsidy dollars, the oil and gas companies. Their big arguments in the news are we going to lower their taxes or not? So they don't get the taxes. They're the ones who give them. And I think that's a big part of it too, is a lot of that, science projects that they've been investing in themselves for the last 10 to 15 years are starting to pay off a little bit too. They're starting to see some of the innovation efficiency happen as well. I don't know. That's what I've kind of seen, the exponentiality, I guess, of that. But your side of things, not your side of things, but your slice there about how maybe there's a little bit more acceptability when it comes to the quality of water plays into it as well. So a number of things, actually. So anyway, kind of a long-winded a question and answer there to about the different angles that are involved with this whole water side of things. But you mentioned the keynote speakers. Any other speakers that you care to mention?
Yeah, sure. And by the way, I love that quote from Kimberly. I think that is really spot on. A little bit of background is that I've spent the last couple of years really covering the frac sand industry as an analyst and writing about it and analyzing it. And it has been incredibly dynamic. And I do feel like water, it feels like we're at the cusp of that same kind of watershed moment, bad pun there, but really a defining moment in this space where the industry is sort of reinventing how we do things and really reassessing the business of it. And so I Great quote. I think that's spot on. Yeah, a couple other speakers that I'd like to mention here. That I think the whole day is great, and I'd encourage folks to head over to oilfieldwater.com so they can see everyone that's speaking. I mean, there's no one on the agenda that takes second, a back seat to anyone else. It's really a star-studded cast. But we've got the several CEOs from the water midstream space, Jim Summers from H2O Midstream and Michael Anderson from Lane Water Midstream, which are two of the really big players. Will be on a panel moderated by a Simmons research analyst, Pierce Hammond, who covers midstream there. The co-founder of Goodnight Midstream, which Jason, you may know, those guys started in the Bakken and then kind of moved into the Permian. Another huge midstream player, Robert Ruby, will be on a panel as well. And then we've got some great analysts, Kelly Bennett from B3 Insight and Benjamin Reed from Sourcewater, who are going to be talking about the outlook for the economics of the space. So that's just to name a few. The whole lineup is truly fantastic, and we're thrilled. John Durand, another one I'd throw out there, president of XRI, will be on the panel as well.
Oilfieldwater.com is the website you mentioned. Friday, June 21st, is that right?
That's right. Yep, downtown Houston.
Downtown Houston. Well, that should be easy for a lot of those guys to make it to that.
I think so. We got a room block as well. The Hyatt right across the street. There's actually a breezeway that connects the hotel to the Petroleum Club down there, so it couldn't get any easier.
All right. Well, I suppose any final thoughts? Anything we left out? Anything that you want to make sure that either we reiterate, or I like to give guests the final word. That way, the question isn't framed by me. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jason, and thank you very much for what you do and having us on. I mean, I think I'd just conclude by saying, as we look at the space today, and the reason why we really developed this conference and have brought it to the industry is that we think we're in the early innings of a business model revolution. And again, coming back to the key problems that are being solved in the space today, we think are business ones. They're banking issues, they're financing issues, they're M&A issues. And they're sort of how do we optimize the solution across this water value chain. And so I think that's what this agenda, that's what this conference is tailored to. I think, again, there's great technical resources out there. And if any of your listeners want to know, I'd be happy to recommend some other events that we love, being an audience for. I think this one is different in that it's really tailored to the executive side of the business development guys, and really the finance side of things.